أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا أشهد أن محمد رسول
Yesterday we heard this testimony from that good monk, priest in the church attached to the prison of our Lord. It was, as we were towards the beginning of the stations leading up to Calvary, but the providence of God placed us in what is perhaps the best preserved and unchanged and uncontaminated part of that dolorous journey. Before it started, the night of agony after Gethsemane, but the torment of solitude and, as we saw, torturous pain, for the position in which the Lord was placed with his two legs in those holes and his arms and ankles chained indicates that he probably could not sleep a wink, because that would seem a particularly uncomfortable way of being obliged to be in one position without any movement at all night. And we know also from the way in which this was shown to Anne Catherine Emmerich, that the Lord, nevertheless, when he had the intuition that dawn was coming, had a secret joy, knowing that it was the dawn of conquest over darkness forever. However, in his humanity, he was fully subject to all the pain on every level that Calvary was going to mean, even before it happened. But the victory, which only after all that was to come, was something of which this good monk spoke, and it's something that we can reflect upon on this Feast of All Saints, where many saints, holy pilgrims, monks, nuns, priests, patriarchs have walked before us on pilgrimage unto the same glory before us in this place in Bethlehem. It was the way in which he gave us to understand the antiquity of this, and in the literature which we were able to purchase from him, it is clear that if one reads between the lines, it was already there in the Gospel. Because, for instance, there was a great light around these angels, but also when Peter and John ran, it was still night. And yet, when Peter saw, he saw with complete certainty everything in broad daylight, that is, in a miraculous light. Therefore, that uncreated light, which according to the analysis in the literature given to us, is what ignites the created light that we see in that miracle, and that explains why it does not burn in the first minutes. The uncreated light was exploding into our created light at that moment of cosmic victory, which only after Calvary was to take place. But he did not stop there. He went on to explain something which is very interesting and which collocates us in this very gospel that we have had, which we had in some way a few days ago also on the mount where it was preached. There we meditated on meekness. Here, let us for a second look at this. Happy or blessed are the pure in heart. They shall see God. And this good monk priest did explain to us yesterday that as well as coming from heaven, it actually comes out of the tomb itself. You can see the split comes out of there. First of all, the tomb starts to change. It becomes kind of a green colour, and the light comes out of it and it goes all over the place, and eventually it settles in the form of a column of light, and he's able to ignite then his own candle from there. But this monk was explaining to us that contemporaneously it's happening also outside, but he went on to explain to certain souls, and he worded it very carefully, those who are particularly clean. And I've heard that expression before in an Orthodox circle, because I had a friend who was an Archimandrite, and the question of cleanliness of soul is very important to them. For instance, in the way in which they have to be in a purity of soul and body before celebrating the liturgy. Hence, if they are married, they are separated from their wives before celebrating. That happens once or at most twice a week, and so on. And there are periods also in the year when that is the case. It's not quite so simple. Therefore, this cleanliness for them is something important, and it is something that we can perhaps take away with us. For purity is something which pervades and cleanses every level, not just the cosmetics. It is something which has to pervade, yes, the body, because the will must be in control. The eyes. Now, have you noticed also that it is actually quite edifying that there is much more modesty here in the Middle East western parts now, something which is in that realm at least pleasing to the Creator. And it is neither something which is extreme or either not elegant, for these ladies in their modesty have a beauty which is that of the Creator as it was wished, and they have no need to add things to their noses and ears to add to the beauty of the Creator, or tattoos upon their bodies or anything of that nature. God made us clean, and to acquire that is to return to Eden. And that purity is something which also pacifies, because when the will is able to calm the body, we are not ruled by passions. We are more open to inspirations from on high. Passions obnubilate. We are not in control. Unfortunately, the B-side of life in the Middle East is that people often are very heated, and that is perhaps a disadvantage to them in their interior life. They go up very quickly in temperature and volume. Something which we forget when we look at the Gospels, because that is the ambiance in which the Lord lived. Human nature has not changed in this part of the world. But peace is something which is so profound that without it we can't really have intimacy either with the Lord or with other people. Why? If we are not irenic, if we are not pacified souls, we cannot pick up the vibes either from God or from man. We are too vibrant, buzzing in such a way that no one can get through the smoke screen. It's rather like in the Second World War, when Hitler was sending these bombers into the area of London. There were barrage balloons and all kinds of things to stop them from getting through. It's exactly the same when we're in that state of unpeace. We are like a barrage to all the people, souls, or God Himself might wish to get through to us. Remember that. People go through life in a mistaken mode and get to the end realizing that they were not listening. There is this blessedness then among the saints which is common, and one sees it. There is, in the presence of a person who is in intimacy of peace with his Maker, and also in integrity with himself, a unified person, a peace which actually overflows. And we are refreshed by being in the presence of a certain person. Let us ask ourselves, is that my case? Are people refreshed, or are we a source of pain? We must think twice before emitting something which removes the peace in the atmosphere. There is one other I would like to remain with a few seconds on. It's this question of persecution and calumny. Happy are you when people abuse you and persecute you and speak all kinds of calumny against you. He adds, however, on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. And in concrete terms, that is the test. If we are in a state of peace and intimacy and well-orientated regard, we let things pass by us. If, on the contrary, what people think and say of us is all important, then we will have a head-on collision so as to re-establish straight away the balance, losing peace and merit in the process. The saints had this in common, but they let things pass and kept their regard purified. It's called purity of intention. Who do we want to please? I remember being told that, we were told it in class in France in the monastery, on est récompensé par celui qu'on sert. We are recompensed by the one that one serves. If it's God, that is true recompense. If it is people, then we will be gratified in the measure in which they recompense us. If it is ourselves, self-glorification, then it is something of a participation of the demonic original sin, I. There is peace only in abdicating and leaving the throne to Jesus. I would just leave you with a thought actually which is given to us from a document of the Vatican on popular piety, because this question of our relationship with the saints, who are our elder brethren, is something we need to get right. Because sometimes one sees in popular devotion a distortion. People coming into church and whizzing towards Saint so-and-so and not having a word for the Blessed Sacrament. Now let's get this once and for all straight. This is from the Directory on Popular Piety and the Liturgy from the Vatican. The ultimate object of veneration of the saints is the glory of God and the sanctification of man by conforming one's life fully to the divine will, and by imitating the virtue of those who were preeminent disciples of the Lord. Catechesis and other forms of doctrinal instruction should therefore make known to the faithful that our relationship with the saints must be seen in the light of the faith and should not obscure the cultus latiae, that is the cult of worship only due to God. Due to God the Father through Christ in the Holy Spirit, but intensify it. They are with us and draw us, as I say, into the family. But the regard must always be on Jesus. There's a huge difference between intimate contact with the Blessed Trinity inhabiting the soul and loving and regarding and contemplating that presence in us, and talking to a fellow soul. It's not quite the same. They are not to be, in that sense, the object of our prayerful direction of interiority. Our interiority is towards the Blessed Trinity, but they are with us in that direction. Just to get it clear. I conclude, this also is the anniversary of my first Mass at the high altar there in the Abbey, and in the Premonstratensian rite which we were following, there was something very beautiful. One would go before celebrating, already rested, before the high altar, and go on one's knees, and we would all chant slowly and solemnly the Veni Creator Spiritus. And then there was a rite for the first Mass of the newly ordained, and every time it referred to the newly ordained, the word used was in Latin, because it was drawn in Latin, sponsus, the bridegroom. There was an element there of nuptiality in the equation. One was actually coming to that thalamus, the place of nuptial encounter, which was the altar, and one had actually already at perpetual vow signed one's life away to that altar, to serve that altar, that particular altar, until death. And there, heaven and earth meet, as here at Bethlehem, there is that coming of eternity into time in geography, so too every Holy Mass is Bethlehem, Bethlehem, house of bread. In that optic we come to the experience of all the saints, for we are eating the bread of angels, the Viaticum, which takes us safely home to glory, to the uncreated light.
O Jesus Christ, remember when thou shalt come again upon the clouds of I supplicate of thee, that here I bow before thee upon my bended knee, that here I know thy presence, and it not be denied, and glorify thy greatness, though hid from human eye. Accept, divine Redeemer, the homage of my praise. Be thou the light and honor and glory of my days. Be thou my consolation when death is drawing nigh. Be thou my only treasure through all eternity.
We should just find out.